Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be doing a highly anticipated, highly requested video, the Gustin Fit Guide. Here in this pile I have all 4 fits from Gustin. I have the vintage straight, the slim, and the skinny fit. Now, this video might get kind of long. I'm going to do my best to keep it clear and concise, but there are chapters down below, so if you want to skip to a particular section, please feel free to jump around in the video, because while I will be trying to keep this short as possible, I do have a tendency to ramble, and this could get quite long. Now, a few of the things you might notice about the denim in this video. All of these are the Gustin Okayama denim, but one pair is going to look a little different. That's because I already have had the straight fit, and they are one of my top 3 favorite pairs of jeans. So they're well worn, well loved, they are faded, and they're going to look a little bit different. Also, my measurements are going to be slightly off on the straight fit because, again, they have been worn. I washed them, I think machine washed them once, but they've been soaked a bunch of times, so they have shrank, they have stretched, so we might see measurements off by a little bit more than your standard like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch allowances just in that one particular pair. The rest of them have been measured after 2 to 3 wears. And that's how I tested these. I wore each of these pairs of jeans for 2 to 3 days in a row. I have not soaked or washed any of the other ones, the new pairs. The new pairs would be the vintage straight, the slim, and the skinny fit, all of which have 2 to 3 days worth of wear in them. They have not been soaked, they have not been washed. They would have not have stretched in any weird ways because they have been washed through a machine or agitated in a bucket. So now you found Gustin. You saw they have 4 different fits. You're wondering what fit to get. But before we get there, we need to know what size waist to buy, because Gustin does not follow vanity sizing. Vanity sizing is what basically all large brands follow. So if you take, say, a pair of Levi's, in my case, I wear a 32 waist in a Levi, that's not actually a 32 waist all the way around in the waist. It's actually 34.5 inches. It's called vanity sizing for a reason. If you say it's a 32-inch waist, it makes you feel a little bit better about your own personal vanity, so you feel like you're a little bit slimmer. Gustin does not follow that, so for me to get the same size in a pair of Gustin that I would get in a Levi, I buy a 34. The 34 is a 34.5 inch waist. We'll use this pair of Levi 527s as an example. You can see on the tag here, these are a 32 by 32. But you just want to pull them just taut enough so they're actually tight, and we are measuring a 17.5 inch, which would make these 34.5 inches. Okay, now that all the housekeeping is done and out of the way, let's get into the actual reason you came here, for the actual fits of each of these Gustin jeans. And for point of reference, I am 5'9", roughly 180 pounds. I wear a 32 by 32 in vanity size or a 34 waist in Gustin size. We will start with the Gustin Vintage Straight. Now this is the newest fit. I believe they introduced it early this year, and this is what they call their Vintage Straight, inspired by a pre-1950s classic denim cut. They say this is a near dead straight line from the top to the bottom. It has a notably higher rise in the front and back, and it has a roomier top block in fuller thigh and leg. And I can say that the very first time I put this on, yes, I did immediately notice that this is a higher rise than the straight that I have been wearing and am very used to. Now, while the rise was noticeable, I didn't find that it was uncomfortable. This is certainly a higher rise than I am personally used to. The one thing that I did notice that I wasn't a big fan of was that the actual pockets do seem to be sitting higher on the leg than the straight fit, which was a little bit weird. I just felt like trying to access my pockets, get my hands into them. It just, they were just a little bit too high for my personal liking. But other than that, I did like the vintage straight fit. I don't have any qualms with it. They fit in the thigh, they fit in the knee, and they fit in the cuff. Moving on to the Gustin Straight Fit, they say that this is the perfect classic straight leg fit, not too skinny and not too loose. The rise is just right, but not super low. It is a timeless cut that will never go out of style. Gustin was born with this fit. And I would pretty much agree with that statement. I would say this fits like a classic Levi's 505, but with a button fly. Now you may be saying there is a Levi 501 that is a button fly and is a very similar cut, but the 501 and the 505, in practice at least, they do fit pretty differently, where I find the 501 is a much slimmer cut and is certainly tighter in the seat and in the thighs. I would say 501 would be more akin to a slim fit than a straight fit. But these straight fits, this is the one, the pair that you can clearly see has the one that has been worn quite a bit. There's lots of fading. They are well worn. They are well loved. I really like the rise on this, and I will say out of all 4 cuts, this has the perfect rise for me. I feel like this sits exactly where I want my jeans. Now, I've worn these with all sorts of shoes and boots and flip-flops. I can wear cowboy boots, I can wear engineer boots, I can wear a pair of Parkhurst, I can wear a pair of Red Wings. Everything fits underneath the Gustin straight fit jeans, and everything fits underneath it comfortably. And I just throw an extra cuff on there, and I can wear these with a pair of flip-flops and not walk on them. So this, again, one of my top 3 favorite pairs of jeans, has gotten a lot of wear over the past year or more. Next, we will move into the Gustin Slim Fit. They say that this is their modern slim cut, that they've dropped the rise as compared to the straight fit, so it sits lower on the hips. The thigh has been brought in along the knee, and there is a slight taper to the cuff. Definitely a more fitted look, but very wearable. And yes, that statement that reads, definitely a more fitted look, but very wearable, it is incredibly true. I was actually very, very surprised with the slim fit here. I really thought that these were going to be a little bit too snug for me in the thigh, because I am a distance runner, so I have big calves and big thighs, and I cannot fit into a lot of slim fit jeans, especially slim fit Selvage jeans, because they do not have stretch, so I am often trying to squeeze my legs into them. But the slim fit in the Gustin was actually really, really nice. Not gonna lie, this is probably my favorite cut. I do wish it had the rise of the straight fit, as I found the rise to be a little bit low, and if I was bending over, there were some times I was showing a little bit of plumber's crack, but overall, this was my favorite fit. I really, really liked the slim fit, and it was a very big surprise to me because I did not think that these were going to fit me nearly as well as they have. I've only ever found one other pair of Selvage Denim slim fit that fit great. Now I can add a second one to the list, so if you're looking for a Selvage Denim jean that fits similar to a Levi 511, which was my preferred jean before I got into Selvage, this would be your jean. The Gustin Slim Fit, it is great. Overall, it fits really, really well, and I would say it fits very comparable to a Levi 511 jean. Last but not least, let's get into the Gustin Skinny Fit. This is their skinny cut. It is a true skinny fit for people who are looking for a more aggressive cut. The thigh is significantly narrow than the slim fit, and the cut carries down to a narrow cuff opening. Now, I will say this is probably my personal least favorite cut. It was a little hard for me to wear because, as I had just mentioned, I am a distance runner, so my thighs and my calves, they're quite big. So this cut was just all around too tight for my personal body type. Now, who would this be best for? Those really skinny guys. The guys that even though they put on a pair of straight fit or sometimes a slim fit jean, they just look like they're wearing a pair of Jenkos from the 90s. This is the cut for you. The overall cuff and dimensions of the jeans I think would still allow you to wear most different pairs of boots comfortably, but you need to have a skinny body type to wear these skinny fit jeans, because if you are an average Joe, or if you have any sort of thick thighs or thick calves, these are just going to be way too tight for you to wear. But how do the measurements on the website compare to the physical measurements of the jeans? Well, we are going to measure each pairs of these jeans. We are going to do so though by Gustin's guidelines. If you click on the fit guide and size chart for the jeans, if you scroll down, you will see the jeans measurement. They tell you to button the waistband and lay your pants flat on a hard surface. And for best results, use a tailor's tape for measuring. They do give you 2 example images of how to measure the waist. You're going to want to make sure that you pull the front waistband all the way up so it fits perfectly against the back, and multiply by 2. There's also an image for the front rise, and you're going to want to make sure you measure it from the crotch seam to the top of the pants. For the thigh, you're going to lay them flat and measure 2 inches down from the crotch seam, and then go straight across and multiply by 2. For the knee, you're going to want to go 15 inches down from the crotch seam, straight across, and double by 2. For the cuff, you're going to lay it flat, go straight across, and multiply by 2. And please note, each of these pairs of jeans is a Gustin size 34, so we will be comparing all of these to the size 34 size guide listed on the website. And we will start off with the vintage straight and at the waist. The size chart says that these will be a 34.5 inch waist. Now measuring across, I get about 17¼ inches, which would come out to be right about 34.5 inches. Next, we will do the front rise. Gustin is pretty easy because they have this red bar tacking. The measurements given are 12¼ inch and my measurement comes out to be 12.5 inches. Moving on to the back rise, we get 15.5 inches per the website, and my physical measurements are 15.75 inches. Next, moving on to the thigh, the measurements that we are given are 24.5 inches, and I get 11.75 inches across, which would be 23.5 inches in circumference. Moving on to the knee, the size guide gives us 17.25 as the measurement, and we are getting 8.75 inches at the half, which would give us 17.5 inches around. For the cuff, we are given an opening of 17 inches, but our physical measurements are 8.25 inches half, or 16.5 circumference. The inseam on every one of these should be about a 36, but we are measuring a 36.75 inch inseam. Moving on to the straight fit, but please keep in mind for this pair, our allowances may be off by more than 1/4 to 1/2 inch because this is a well-worn pair. Our waist should be 34.5 inches. The physical measurement here is 17.5 or 35 all the way around. The front rise given is 11.25 inches. My physical measurement is 10.75. We are not given a back rise measurement for these jeans on the size guide, but our physical back rise would be 15 inches. Moving on to the thigh, we have the same as the vintage straight at 24.5, and our physical measurements are coming out at 11.75 or 23.5 all the way around, which is the same measurements we got on the vintage straight. Moving down to the knee, per our size guide, we should have an 18-inch circumference, but our physical measurements are going to be 8.25 half or 17.5 circumference. For the cuff, we are given 17.5, but our physical measurements are going to be 8.25 or 16.5 all the way around, which once again match up exactly to the vintage straight. Once again, our inseam should be a 36, but this well-worn and washed pair is coming in at 34.75 inches. Next, we will move on to the slim fit. Once again, per the website, these should be 34.5 inches, but our physical measurements are coming in at 17.5 or 35 inches all the way around. Our front rise should be about 10.1 inches, and we are measuring about 10.125, which would be about 10.125, so I'd say that is pretty spot on. Once again, we are not given a back rise measurement, but we are measuring a back rise of 14 inches. The size guide says we should have 23.4 inches in the thigh, and we are getting 11.5, which would be 23 inches all the way around. For the knee, we should have about 16.3 inches, and we are getting 8.5 inches or 17 inches all the way around. For the cuff, we should have 15.3 inches, but we are measuring 7.75 or 15.5, which is pretty close to the size guide. Once again, we should have a 36-inch inseam, and we are getting about 36.75, so we are lining up exactly with the vintage straight in the inseam. And now finally, let's check out the skinny fit. Once again, these should be 34.5 inches in the waist, and we are again measuring 17.5, which would be a 35-inch waist. Our front rise should be 10.1 inches, and we are once again measuring 10.125, which would be 10.125, so we are pretty spot on with that. Again, we are not given a back rise, but we will be doing our own measuring here, and we get a back rise of 13 inches. The size guide is telling us our thigh should be 22 inches, and our physical measurements come out to be 10.5 or 21 inches all the way around. For the knee, we should have 15.6 inches, and we are getting 8 inches or 16 inches all the way around. Our cuff should be 14.75 inches, but we are measuring 7.25, which would come out to be 14.5. And lastly, we have our inseam, which should be 36, and once again, we are getting 36.75 inches. Now I want to jump into a split screen of me wearing each of these pairs of jeans side by side, so you can get a full-on look of how they all look compared to one another on an average person. And once again, I will say that the slim fit was a surprise winner for me. I thought that these were going to be too skinny in the thighs and the calves for my body type, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised that these fit me really, really well. I do wish the rise was a tiny bit higher, the same as it is on the straight fit, but overall, I really like this cut. I don't know if it's going to take the top prize from my straight fits because these are well broken in and they just feel great on the body, but I do really, really like the slim cut of these jeans. So there we go, there you have it, each and every one of the Gustin fits on what I would call an average Joe. Even though I am a distance runner, I think I have a pretty average body. A lot of us grew up doing skateboarding, rollerblading, biking, skiing, snowboarding, playing any sort of sports, football, baseball, basketball. So all of us are going to be built pretty similar to me. And I think that's a good visual representation how each of these pairs of jeans will look on the body. And I hope that my breakdowns and my physical measurements of the jeans will help you in your buying in the future. So with that, if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Smash that big red button and ring that bell right next week so you get notifications the next time I post a brand new video. Good night.